When Pandora woke up this morning, her mind felt a little hazy, as if she had forgotten something important she had wanted to do. Sitting up in her bed, the memory hit her. She had planned to steal the Arcanus from the Museum of the Paranormal, but now a problem arose. She had school today. Since she couldn't be in two places at once, she realized she'd have to prioritize. What should I do now? Classes might actually be interesting today, but I still haven't come up with a hero name. That's going to be tough. Pandora thought to herself. As the thought drifted through her mind, a name suddenly surfaced, seemingly out of nowhere. Canara. It sounded cool to her, and the idea of combining it with a title made it even better. Canara the Queen rang pleasantly in her ears, powerful and commanding. Pandora dressed herself, deciding she would visit the museum later in the afternoon, or perhaps at night. After all, it didn't really matter whether she stole the Arcanus during the day or after dark. With her decision made, she got ready and left her room. Camilla greeted her with a friendly smile, and the two headed to the cafeteria together. They chatted casually until, as they were nearly done eating, Mio joined them at the table. He glanced at them with his usual grin and asked how their morning was going. "I still don't like you." "Stop following me," Pandora replied bluntly. "She's not interested in you." "Don't you get it? Money can't buy you everything," Camilla added with a scathing tone. All right. No need to bite my head off. Looks like someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Again, Mio muttered. To him, Pandora's constant hostility was still baffling. Even though not all of the students who lived in the Academy's dorms had met everyone in Class 1K, it was obvious that Pandora and Camilla's attitudes weren't going to win them any popularity contests. One of Mio's friends tried to calm him down, saying, "Sometimes there are just people you can't get along with, and that's okay." But Mio still couldn't understand why the two girls were always so irritable. Just then, Mio noticed a timid young woman with brown hair and soft brown eyes cautiously approaching Pandora and Camilla's table. Surprisingly, Camilla didn't shoo her away. The girl seemed shy, but Mio managed to overhear their conversation. "What's your Arcanus?" Pandora asked, sounding curious for once. I can control chains, but it's, limited to small, thin ones?" The girl answered nervously. "My name's Malin," she added. Pandora and Camilla introduced themselves in return. As the meal came to an end, the two girls noticed that Malin seemed to lack confidence. Camilla placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and said, "With training, your ability could become something amazing." Mio, watching from a distance, was surprised by Camilla's uncharacteristic kindness. Later that morning, during their first class, Pandora, Camilla, and Malin found themselves seated in a room with 20 other students. Their teacher, Lady Riverdale, strode into the classroom, looking somewhat frazzled but composed enough to begin her lesson. "All right, class," she said, clapping her hands together. "Today, you need to come up with your hero names. Oh, and we'll also be electing a class representative." Without waiting for any questions, she sat down at her desk, closed her eyes, and rested her head on the surface. Within seconds, she had fallen asleep. For a moment, the room was silent with confusion. Then, all at once, the students erupted into a chaotic mix of voices. Some enthusiastically threw out potential hero names for themselves, while others shouted about who should or shouldn't be the class representative. From Pandora's perspective, the noise was unbearable. She stared out the window, watching the snow gently falling outside. Her classmates' cow's chatter seemed utterly pointless to her. "These arrogant wannabe heroes disgust me," Pandora thought bitterly. If only they could see that the world isn't as simple as good versus evil. They're so blinded by the righteousness of so-called heroes, thinking they're creating some kind of paradise. But their paradise is built on suffering. If this continues, the eternal war will never end. Her thoughts were interrupted by Camilla's voice. "Have you thought of a hero name yet?" Camilla asked, leaning closer. Pandora glanced at her. "I was thinking of calling myself Canara," she said. Camilla raised an eyebrow. "You're really bad at naming things," she teased. Pandora shot back. "What about you? What's your name going to be?" "I've decided on Black Mask," Camilla said without hesitation. Pandora nodded thoughtfully. The name suited Camilla. It matched her dark and brooding demeanor. "That's a good name for you?" Pandora said quietly before turning her attention back to the window. As the snow continued to fall, she found herself thinking again. One day, I'll create a world where no child has to cry anymore. It is in this moment that Pandora's idea transforms into something much deeper, a profound mutation. What had once been simple revenge fueling her actions is now something more, a vision, a goal she is determined to achieve. The school lesson passes by in a blur, and before Pandora realizes it, Frank and Tomoko have already been elected as class representatives. Pandora approaches them, feigning interest in their words, pretending to care about their plans and perspectives. She also pretends to be intrigued by the training of their Arcanus abilities, but in truth, none of it matters to her. Time slips away, and the first school day comes to an end. On this day, Pandora manages to briefly control her plasma ability without needing to see it. Still, this is a skill she must refine further. Through the training session, she also recognizes another important aspect. She must focus on combining her powers with technology. As the instructors have emphasized, it's crucial to understand that one power alone cannot protect against threats outside its domain. Mio serves as a prime example. While his abilities provide considerable protection against projectile weapons and kinetic attacks, they offer no defense against energy-based assaults. Extreme temperatures, whether too low or far beyond his fire resistance, can still harm him. Moreover, his power only shields him from kinetic energy while it is actively deployed. Pandora reflects on this, realizing that although she is formidable, possessing the ability to steal others' superpowers, she must wield her abilities intelligently and subtly. Exposure is her greatest risk, and she understands that at least 10 heroes exist in the world who could kill her instantly without the need for a drawn-out battle. These are the 10 most powerful heroes in existence, beings of such overwhelming strength that Pandora cannot currently hope to challenge them. "How was your day?" Camilla asks, breaking her train of thought. They hadn't crossed paths during the training sessions. "It was all right, I guess," Pandora replies, her tone nonchalant. "You've made great progress," Tomoko says as she walks past. The snow crunches softly beneath their feet, and the twin suns blaze brightly in a cloudless sky. Pandora watches Tomoko leave, rolling her eyes in irritation, and contemplates taking a small excursion to clear her head. But before she can think further, a snowball splatters against the back of her head. "Sorry," Malin calls out apologetically. Pandora, unfazed, scoops up a handful of snow, compressing it tightly with her enhanced strength. Bit by bit, she packs more snow into the ball, using her superhuman power to create an impossibly dense projectile. With a quick motion, she hurls the compressed snowball at Malin with tremendous force. The snowball strikes her shoulder, pushing her back as if hit by a solid punch. The consistency of the snow is perfect for a snowball fight, and to her own surprise, Pandora finds herself enjoying the moment. Rolling a massive ball of snow far larger than herself, she lifts it effortlessly. But then, without warning, something pulls her attention away from the scene before her. Her focus shifts to a distant sensation, an unmistakable tug deep within her being. Before her mind's eye, an image flickers. A glass orb containing a single floating drop of blood. The vision vanishes as quickly as it appeared, but this time, something is different. Unlike in her dreams, the crystal orb now rests in the hand of a man clad in black armor. When Pandora concentrates harder, she recalls faint details, dragons in the background of the image. Setting the massive snowball aside, Pandora narrows her focus on the fleeting vision. The snowball fight halts as others notice her distraction. Someone says something to her, but Pandora ignores them. Whatever she sensed felt entirely foreign, unrelated to paranormal energy. If it had been, she would have detected it instantly. This sensation was fundamentally different, a gentle bending of the world's laws in an unnatural way. The realization hits her like a hammer. It's magic, and the only beings capable of wielding magic in such a manner are vampires. There is no other explanation. "Bloodline tracking," Pandora mutters under her breath. "This means my mother is dead. Otherwise, this magic would be targeting her instead of me." The thought lands like a heavy blow, and Pandora suddenly finds it difficult to stand upright. "I don't feel well. I need to go to the bathroom," she mutters to no one in particular. Without waiting for a response, she turns and hurries away. Pandora knows she cannot easily explain what just happened, But thanks to Camilla's prior explanations, she is aware that even superheroes occasionally experience a strange sense of connection when a close relative dies, regardless of distance. She could pass this off as a sudden, inexplicable feeling, a premonition that someone close to her, perhaps a family member, is near death. I just need to get out of here, Pandora thinks as she locks herself inside a bathroom stall. Without hesitation, she opens a portal to her pocket dimension and slips inside. As Pandora steps into her pocket dimension, she can no longer contain her pain. The fact that the bloodline tracking spell identified her as the nearest target confirms what she fears most. Her mother is dead. The weight of this revelation crushes her, driving her to despair. For several agonizing moments, she does nothing but cry and scream, her anguish reverberating through the emptiness of the dimension. But then, Pandora forces herself to pull it together. Power. She needs power. Only then can she ensure something like this never happens again. Yet a gnawing question rises within her. Why are the vampires even tracking her? What do they want from her? And most disturbingly, how did they get access to her blood? Or more likely, her mother's blood? These are questions that linger, unanswered, and Pandora knows she won't find the answers anytime soon. Pandora feels strange. Is it normal to react this way to her mother's death? Shouldn't she feel more? The last glimmer of hope that anyone in her family might still be alive has been extinguished. Yet all she feels now is a hollow emptiness. The grief has passed, leaving nothing behind but a void. Darkness and silence fill her heart. Time moves on, and Pandora knows it is time for her to return. Now that her emotions are subdued, she summons the portal once more and steps through. She heads to a sink and stares at her reflection in the mirror. What will she say if someone asks about her? What words could possibly suffice? Nothing comes to mind. Seeking a distraction, Pandora leaves the school and wanders the bustling streets of Metropole Alpha. The city's noise and activity wash over her, but nothing truly catches her attention. She walks aimlessly, her thoughts circling back to her loss. Eventually, she decides it's time to head to the museum. Slipping into a side alley, Pandora changes her outfit and reemerges from another alley, nearly half a kilometer from the museum. Her appearance is entirely transformed, blending her seamlessly into the crowd. The grief is no longer overwhelming. She doesn't feel bad, nor does she feel good. There's simply nothing. An aching void festers within her, whispering for her to feel something, anything, even if it's the desire to hurt someone. Yet that whisper is faint, not enough to stir her into action. Am I still normal, or have I changed? Pandora wonders, reflecting on herself. No, even back then, I felt nothing after the hunt. I've probably always been this emotionless. As these thoughts swirl in her mind, she finally arrives at the museum. It towers above her, an imposing and elegant structure that stretches toward the heavens, its presence as grand as its reputation. As Pandora enters the Museum of the Paranormal, she immediately notices an unusual group in the crowd, members of the exotic Asyl clan. Their presence surprises her. The clan members stand out sharply, not just due to their striking appearance, but also because of their lack of clothing. Despite the bitter winter cold, the men wear nothing but loincloths or thin wraps, and the women are equally scantily dressed. They seem unaffected by the freezing temperatures as they explore the museum, much to Pandora's astonishment. Within the group, there are 3 women and 4 men, their expressions calm and unreadable. Pandora's gaze drifts away from the near-naked clan members and toward the exhibits. In one glass display case, the head of a dragon is showcased, a relic that immediately draws the attention of many visitors. The artifact reminds Pandora just how extraordinary her parents truly were. With a heavy heart, she turns her eyes away. Memories of her childhood come flooding back, particularly the realization that the clothes her parents had gifted her were made of rare, exotic materials. For her, this was proof of how much they cared for her, how deeply they loved her. Yet, guilt lingers in Pandora's chest. The last thing she had said to her parents before their separation was a rebellious declaration that she needed to see the outside world, that she felt stifled under their protection. She wishes now that she could have told them how much she loved them, how much she cherished her life by their side. But how could she have foreseen what would happen? How could she have known that even low-ranking chaos zones, like the one they lived in, were under such strict surveillance? Pandora sighs, her thoughts darkening. She recalls how much chaos energy she had absorbed in secret. Had her parents truly been unaware of her actions, or had they underestimated the consequences? Perhaps they believed their remote home was far enough from society to escape notice. Regardless of the reason, it was too late to change anything now. Lost in thought, Pandora finds herself standing in front of another display. She reaches out, her fingers brushing against the glass case. "Don't touch the exhibits," a bored security guard calls out, his voice monotone. Pandora ignores the warning. Her hand presses lightly against the glass, her eyes fixed on the stuffed body of a silvery gray thunderbird, its feathers adorned with crystalline blue growths. The creature must have been fearsome in its prime. The plaque beside the exhibit states that this beast single-handedly obliterated an entire village 50 years ago. But now its power has faded, reduced to a mere remnant. A small tendril of violet light and purple flames emerges from Pandora's palm, phasing through the glass as though it isn't there. The energy curls above the creature's head, encircling something invisible, until the object becomes clear. Pandora watches as a sphere of turquoise light, crackling with electricity, is drawn into her hand. She's almost certain no one else has noticed. Glancing around, she sees no reactions from the crowd. The only one who seems slightly puzzled is the security guard, who stares blankly at the stuffed thunderbird, his expression vacant. After a moment, he shrugs and turns his attention back to his holographic wristband. Pandora doesn't need any special abilities to tell that he's utterly unmotivated in his job. Moving on, Pandora focuses on the next area she had scouted the day before. The new electricity-based ability she has just acquired is weak, a D-rank skill that allows her to manipulate ambient electricity. She quickly discovers that the ability lets her sense the electrical signals in others' nerves when she touches them, though they are too faint to be of practical use. However, the real potential lies in disrupting electronics and machinery. At the next exhibit, a dinosaur-like creature with an electrical ability catches her interest, but as Pandora attempts to absorb its power, she finds herself unable to do so. Every time she tries, the ability seems to slip away, as if it's a slippery fish wriggling free from her grasp. Frustrated, she gives up after several attempts. Determined, Pandora pushes through a cluster of visitors to reach another display. This time, the creature on exhibit is a bizarre hybrid. Part fish, part lizard, part centipede. Its grotesque appearance is exactly as strange as its description. A fish's lower body, lizard-like legs, and a centipede's armored exoskeleton. 12 mismatched eyes stare in every direction except forward, making it look like a nightmare brought to life. "What the hell is this monstrosity?" Pandora mutters under her breath. Despite its grotesque appearance, the creature had unique abilities in life. From it, Pandora absorbs two powers: the ability to grow scales uncontrollably on her body, and the ability to harden parts of her skin. Testing these irritatingly specific skills, Pandora discovers a surprising outcome when she combines them. To her astonishment, she gains the ability to shoot hardened scales from her body. Though with her current lack of proper scales, the ability is practically useless. Annoyed, Pandora tries mixing this skill with another ability from the same creature. The result is far more promising. She gains the power to grow stone-like scales on her body at will. Finally, something useful, Pandora thinks, relieved. At least it wasn't a complete waste. Two other F-rank abilities she experiments with yield a strange new power: the ability to make her body parts detonate. Unsure what use such a volatile skill could have, Pandora decides to destroy the effect entirely, recycling its energy into her portal ability. Pandora moves on to her next target, her suspicions about her osmosia ability confirmed. No one seems to notice the disappearance of the powers she's been stealing from the dead monsters. Even the faint traces of chaos energy she uses to activate her abilities remain undetected. Reaching another exhibit, Pandora absorbs a new ability, only to find it utterly useless. The skill causes infertility, rendering the user permanently sterile. Disgusted, Pandora immediately destroys the effect and recycles the energy. With each new exhibit, Pandora's mastery over her abilities grows, But the museum has many more secrets to uncover, and Pandora isn't done yet. As Pandora finishes her business with the display case, a shrill alarm suddenly blares through the museum, its flashing red lights illuminating the halls. She frowns, confused. After all, she hasn't done anything that should have triggered an alarm. Then, a voice over the intercom announces, "Attention! Villains have infiltrated the museum. All civilians, please evacuate Sector A3 immediately." Chaos erupts as panicked visitors rush for the exits. Pandora, however, shrugs indifferently and lingers behind. Ignoring the commotion, she calmly heads toward her next destination in Sector A4, which happens to be uncomfortably close to the area where the villains are reportedly active. It doesn't bother her in the slightest. Just as she's about to turn into the new section of the Grand Museum, a security guard steps in her path to stop her. It's the same guard she encountered earlier. Without hesitation, Pandora raises her hand, conjuring a fireball that hurtles toward him. Caught off guard, the man barely has time to react. Believing her to be just another civilian, he's shocked when the flames strike. Although his protective suit absorbs much of the heat, his exposed face and hands are left blistered with burns. Pandora can see the confusion on his face and understands why. At the moment, she's using several abilities simultaneously, creating an erratic signature that must appear utterly incomprehensible to anyone capable of sensing paranormal powers. Her signature is a chaotic blend of energies, like a fragmented kaleidoscope, that would leave most observers baffled as to what her abilities truly are. At least, that's what she assumes. When the flames fail to incapacitate the guard, Pandora seamlessly shifts tactics. She manipulates the surrounding electrical systems, pulling energy from the museum's surveillance networks, wiring, and nearby technology. A compressed orb of electricity crackles to life in her hand. The guard's suit malfunctions, and his holographic wrist display flickers and dies as she overloads its circuits. Meanwhile, nearby in Sector A3, a deep, commanding voice resonates. This corpse is well preserved, but it's useless. Let's move on to the next one. The speaker is a striking man with dark skin, vivid green eyes, and equally dark green hair. He's clad in nothing but a loincloth, his physique elegant and muscular, radiating a beauty so extraordinary that Pandora momentarily wonders if his allure is enhanced by some kind of superpower. Could it be an arcanist that amplifies his charm? She shakes her head, deciding that's a mystery for another time. More pressing is the question of what these individuals, clearly part of the Asylum clan, are doing here. Just as she begins to stealthily approach, her movement catches their attention. "Who's there?" The young man demands, his voice sharp. Pandora steps out from behind a display case, hands raised to show she means no harm. "Are you with the HV?" the man asks suspiciously. "Huh? What makes you think that? If I were, would I announce myself like this?" Pandora replies with a casual shrug. "She's got a point," a female voice interjects from the group. "If she were a Heroes Guild member, she'd already be trying to stop us." Pandora stretches lazily and waves off their suspicions. "Relax. I just want to pass through," she says, her gaze briefly resting on a humanoid ape-like creature encased in glass atop a black marble pedestal. The young man notices her interest and narrows his eyes. He seems to suspect she knows more about the creature, specifically why it possesses no arcanus. His suspicions deepen when Pandora casually asks, "So, do you have plans for that ape monster?" "It's ours. What do you want with it?" the man counters. "I said what I want, to look at it. What's there to discuss? If it's a problem, I'll just leave." "I'm not interested in fighting you," Pandora replies, turning to walk away. "Hold it." A tall woman with red eyes and green hair steps forward, her imposing figure clad in scant attire that reveals her muscular build. She doesn't seem the least bit self-conscious about her revealing outfit, but Pandora isn't distracted by it. It's clearly meant to unnerve men, not her. "I said stop," the woman commands as Pandora continues walking. "I already told you. I don't care what you're doing here," Pandora says flatly. The woman raises her hand, and the ground beneath Pandora's feet begins to liquefy. But Pandora doesn't sink as expected. She turns, curious rather than alarmed. While she had hoped to avoid a fight, it's clear now that she'll have to teach the Asylum clan a lesson. I can't steal their powers mid-fight. It takes too long. There's no way they'll let me touch their skin long enough for that, Pandora thinks, raising her hands. In one hand, a flickering spark of lightning coalesces into a ball of bluish light. In the other, a fireball blazes to life. Her eyes glow faintly as she focuses on her opponents. I knew it. You've got multiple arcanis. You're not like the other weaklings from the Heroes Guild, the tall woman sneers. Suddenly, the walls and floor erupt with jagged stone spears, shooting toward Pandora from nearly every direction. Thanks to her heightened senses, similar to a bat's echolocation, she narrowly evades the deadly projectiles. Dust clouds the air as she takes a step back, her movements precise. Pandora bends low, and with a thunderous strike, she smashes one of the stone spears into rubble, the sound of breaking rock echoing loudly through the museum. The Asile clan is something Pandora finds utterly fascinating. Their secrets and the necromancer they have on their side spark an intense curiosity in her. Yet, in this fleeting moment, as Pandora tightens her muscles for a leap and feels the adrenaline surging through her veins, she experiences a high unlike any other. She thinks to herself, "This is the fight I needed to shake off my grief and sharpen my mind." A moment where every mistake could be her last. She never would have believed it could be this exhilarating. The dust swirling around her slightly obscures her vision as Pandora unleashes her powers. Fire and electricity spiral together in a brilliant cascade of destruction. Pandora creates a decoy of herself that stands in place, motionless, as she shifts to the side. She might have thought she'd already won if she weren't so cautious, or if she hadn't detected, using ultrasound, that her enemies were still standing. This suggests they have a power capable of protecting them. How can she have so many abilities? The woman mutters to herself, disbelief evident in her voice. Neil, a member of the Asile clan, has never seen anything like this. A human wielding so many abilities without having turned into an arcanist. It feels impossible, a concept her mind struggles to process. Yet the energy signature radiating from this stranger feels unnatural and utterly alien. Something about it is fundamentally wrong. Nell can't quite put it into words, but it's as though this stranger somehow defies the laws of nature itself. She thinks this feeling is similar to what she experiences when she stands in the presence of her chieftain, but much stronger. At that moment, Neil's eyes widen. She had come here on orders from her leader to collect the corpses of fallen heroes and other bodies. She never expected to encounter someone like this. I have to report this to the chieftain, she thinks. There, Neela exclaims as she spots Pandora. She raises her hands, and the ground behind Pandora shifts and warps once more. But just as the stone's spears shoot forward, something entirely unexpected happens. Pandora's form dissolves into white steam, streaked with purple lightning. A sense of danger washes over Neil as she scans her surroundings frantically. She can't identify the source of this arcanis before it's too late. A strike slams against her protective shield. For a fleeting second, she catches a glimpse of a fist before the force transfers through the shield and sends her hurtling backward. She crashes into the wall, cracks radiating outward in the shape of her body. The protective shield briefly flickers into visibility before dissipating entirely. This attack? She didn't anticipate it. Nell looks around, but can no longer see the woman. The fire alarm blares, and the heat around her intensifies. Nella searches desperately for her opponent, but the woman remains elusive. A scream erupts beside her as Mark is sent flying through the air. Mark is a young man with the Arcanis hypno speech, which allows him to manipulate others with his voice. However, he hasn't yet had the chance to use it. His ability requires him to know both the identity and location of his target to work. Additionally, his Arcanis cannot influence more than 2 people simultaneously, and it cannot affect individuals with stronger paranormal power than his own. What about the others? Nell asks Mark, but before he can respond, an explosion drowns out his words. The ground trembles as if a wall has collapsed. As the smoke and dust begin to settle, a bone-like tentacle shoots out from the haze and slams against Mark's protective shield. The shield ripples, momentarily becoming visible. You'll pay for this! The way you fight is dishonorable! A male voice shouts. Mark sees his brother emerging from the smoke, looking around in confusion. His brother spots Mark and Neil, immediately dropping into a combat stance. But then he asks something neither of them expected. Are you the real ones? Say something only the real ones would know. Before they can answer, two hands emerge from the smoke and clasp his head. A sickening crack echoes as his neck snaps. A figure resembling Neil steps out of the smoke, wiping bloody hands on her pants. The fake Neil grins wide and unsettlingly. In that moment, the real Neil realizes their enemy doesn't just have 3 or 4 Arcanus. They possess more abilities than she can count. This realization makes her legs tremble as a cold, creeping fear spreads through her bones. She recalls her father's words, "Never let your pride blind you, for there will always be someone stronger than you." Another saying echoes in her mind as she senses the horrifying aura radiating from Pandora. If you ever meet someone who takes joy in fighting, unfazed by pain or threats, you must run. Some people are so twisted, so inhuman, that reasoning with them is impossible. They're monsters in human form. These words ring louder in her head as she faces what can only be described as a nightmare incarnate. "Run!" screamed Lipa, the third strongest of her group. "Don't let her touch you," she added, her voice strained, clearly weakened from injuries that made even speaking a challenge. Pandora's grin widened as she watched her final quarry approach her. The Asile clan members were always a curious lot. Unlike others, they never fled, even when the odds were stacked against them. They always fought to the bitter end. Smirking, Pandora attacked, trying to silence Lipa before she could continue speaking. "She can deactivate powers with her touch. It takes time, but it's permanent," Lipa shouted, her metallic energy forming a defensive barrier around her. Even with Pandora's relentless assault, Lipa proved difficult to deal with. Her Arcanus ability allowed her to create protective shields, which also had a variety of other uses. Pandora noticed that Lipa had stopped trying to trap her with the barriers, focusing instead on maintaining the ones that protected her and her 2 companions. Pandora wasn't sure if this was because Lipa's power was waning or because she was spreading herself too thin. Either way, Pandora realized she couldn't continue like this. She needed to touch the other 2 to deactivate their abilities and steal their powers, but every attack she launched was repelled by the barriers. This was proving to be a significant obstacle, even with all the abilities Pandora had already stolen. The fight was more challenging than she had anticipated. The ground rumbled violently, and Pandora barely managed to dodge the jagged spikes that erupted beneath her feet. If one of those had hit her, it could have been disastrous. This particular Arcanus power annoyed Pandora immensely. Neil, one of Lipa's companions, seemed capable of reshaping the environment at will. What made it even worse was that Neil didn't need to physically touch the areas she manipulated. A simple line of sight was enough. "Stop!" commanded Mark, the last of the trio, his voice carrying an undeniable power. Pandora froze in place, and in the next moment, sharp stone spikes pierced through her legs and arms. Pain surged through her body like molten fire, and for a brief moment, it felt as though her blood was boiling. Instinctively, driven by the sheer will to survive, Pandora shifted into her vampiric form. A burst of purple lightning crackled along Pandora's body, racing from her glowing violet eyes to her pitch-black hair. The transformation, though subtle, went unnoticed by the 3 Asile clan members, who were too focused on recovering from their own exhaustion. The air around them grew stifling, heavy with the heat of the encroaching fire. The distant wails of approaching sirens echoed through the chaos. "That was close. I didn't think she'd be this hard to kill," Nell muttered, turning away from the scene. "It's a shame we can't turn her body into an Arcanus artifact," she added, glancing briefly at Pandora's unmoving form. But as Neil prepared to leave, a cold shiver ran down her spine. She stopped dead in her tracks as her gaze fell on the bodies of her fallen comrades. She wanted to bring their remains back to the clan's temple, but there was no time. The fire had spread too far, and the building looked ready to collapse. Just as Nelle was about to step through the door into the main hall, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over her. It wasn't the fire, its heat was still distant. This feeling was something else entirely. A swift shadow blurred past her, followed by a deafening crash. Lipa let out a blood-curdling scream as she was slammed into the wall. The barriers protecting her shattered like fragile glass, and the sickening sound of bones breaking echoed through the room. Even from more than 20 meters away, Nella could tell that Lipa was done for. The figure holding Lipa aloft by her outstretched arm was unlike the Pandora they had faced moments ago. Her hair, now shimmering silver white, flowed around her glowing eyes. She stood taller, her presence radiating an aura of malevolence. Black flames, tinged with purple and violet, danced around her, exuding an overwhelming pressure. "Two left," Pandora murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Nellie could only watch in stunned silence as Pandora turned her attention elsewhere. It was then that a man in a suit bolted past them, his face hidden behind a mask, clutching something that sparkled faintly in his hand. For a moment, both Nell and Pandora were too bewildered to act. This man clearly wasn't with either of them. The thought of another party interfering during their fight struck them both as bizarre. "Should I kill him?" Pandora wondered aloud, watching the man flee. But then she dismissed the thought. It didn't matter. If word spread about someone who could permanently deactivate Arcana's powers, it would only add to the confusion. Leaving behind such enigmatic clues to mislead investigators was part of Pandora's strategy. What Pandora hadn't anticipated, however, was her instinctive reversion to her true vampire form, or the words that came next from her remaining opponent. "You're a chaos user, aren't you?" Nella said, her voice trembling slightly. Pandora's reaction gave her away, and Nil's suspicion was confirmed. The idea that there could be someone like her clan's chieftain, a true chaos user, was something Neil had never considered possible. What does she mean? I'm a chaos user? Isn't it nearly impossible for someone like me to exist? Pandora thought to herself, frowning. You're lying, Pandora spat back. I don't even know what you mean by chaos user, but I'll figure it out eventually. You're strong. I have no reason to keep fighting someone like you, Nell replied calmly. You'll win in the end, so why would I lie? I can feel it. You're a chaos user. Pandora narrowed her gaze, her thoughts racing as she tried to piece together what she knew about the Aesile clan. According to her research, the Aesile clan were the indigenous people of the primeval forests on the Luna continent. They called their powers blessings, and had used them to survive against the monsters and magical creatures of the wilderness. Fiercely proud, they considered it an honor to fight and a grave insult to adapt to the cultures of outsiders. They had no fear of death, bringing their fallen to their sacred temples instead of burying them. You're truly bizarre, Pandora said, her voice tinged with genuine confusion. I've killed your friends and family, and yet you don't hate me. How can you not feel any anger toward me? Page 8. I don't feel any anger toward you. I'm just a little curious about how you got an aura like that, said Neil. Pandora's Arcanus ability, lie detector, told her the woman was speaking nothing but the truth. She was being honest, which was almost more perplexing than if she'd been lying. Pandora tilted her head slightly, trying to process this. At that moment, she could feel the last of her wounds closing, and the pain ebbed away. Okay, but why should I believe you about me being a chaos user? And what does that have to do with whether I should let you go or not? Pandora asked. I assume you think chaos users like you are born only through the union of humans and vampires. But you seem to forget that there are many more magical races in this world than just vampires. The world is far larger than you imagine, Nellie replied. Pandora's lips curved into a faint smile. She hadn't expected to gain anything meaningful from this interaction, but Nell had inadvertently provided something valuable, a perspective she'd overlooked. There really were more than just vampires out there. The idea that the union between a human and a non-human could create a chaos user made sense, logically. You don't trust me, but you might not realize that chaos doesn't always have to be negative. It depends on the emotions that create it. Chaos is simply the result of magic, paranormal power, and emotions colliding, Nell explained. Everything she said rang true, and Pandora found herself surprised again. But it still wasn't enough reason to spare her, Pandora thought. She raised her hand to continue, but then she felt it again. That sensation of something searching for her. It was as if something from deep within her blood was looking upward toward her. The pull was stronger now than she had anticipated. She could feel that whoever or whatever it was drawing closer, and it was only a matter of time before they pinpointed her location. You're lucky. I have something else to take care of. Let's pretend this never happened. We are even, Pandora said as she crouched low. Just as she prepared to leap, she heard Nell call out, saying this was all a misunderstanding and she wouldn't take it as a cause for retaliation. Pandora, however, was already gone, propelling herself with explosive force through the closed window. She shattered the glass and launched herself into the air, using her momentum to spring off an invisible platform midair, ascending further. Her Arcanus, Skywalkerst, allowed her to create fleeting platforms in the air, manifesting them for mere fractions of a second, only long enough to propel herself onward. The ability was energy efficient, but extremely practical. As Pandora transformed back into her human form, she hoped the change would sever the spell tracking her. Yet she quickly realized she'd been mistaken. The spell still had a hold on her, though its grip had weakened. "Why are you running from us, daughter of Her Majesty Seraphina von Bloodfallen?" came a voice from within her blood. "Who are you?" Pandora asked. "You can use the blood speech. Now, that's unexpected," the voice said. "Cousin, you've improved since my last visit. That pleases me."
What do you mean by saying I've been improved? Pandora asked. I forgot to introduce myself properly, Pandora. My name is Erasmus von Bloodfallen. I am the Crown Prince of the Vampire Kingdom, Erasmus said. The revelation left Pandora frozen in place. The powdered snow swirled around her feet, as if mirroring the turmoil within her. She stared down at the ground, trying to make sense of the implications. Erasmus's claim was undeniably true, which could only mean one thing. Her mother must have been the sister of the Vampire Empress. Otherwise, Erasmus would never have addressed her as his cousin. This revelation hit her as hard as the news of her mother's death. It sent her thoughts spiraling for a moment, her mind overwhelmed by the sudden connection. The twin suns cast their light through the glass skyscrapers around her, scattering rays that shimmered against her unfocused gaze. What does this mean for me? If my mother was the Empress's sister, that would make me eligible for the throne. But I don't want anything to do with the vampires right now. What if they don't even accept me, with my Chaos Arcanus and my nature? Pandora's thoughts churned, a mix of defiance and unease. Yet, as conflicted as she felt, there was an undeniable sense of connection to the vampires she couldn't shake. Even so, one thing was clear. She wasn't ready to join them. Not yet. She had her own plans. She would remain with the heroes and dismantle them from within. She couldn't abandon her mission. Not now. Wait, Erasmus was at my house once, wasn't he? Why did I forget about that? It must have been 15 years ago. Or maybe less. That's probably why it's so hard to remember, Pandora thought to herself, the memory surfacing faintly. Her mind slowed as the shock wore off, allowing her to focus once more on her cousin. Do you really expect me to come with you? Pandora asked, though she already knew his answer. Yes, with us, you'd be safe, and I want to see you again, cousin, Erasmus replied. But I'm not a pure vampire. Are you sure the others will accept me? Pandora asked, unable to hide the slight joy she felt at hearing him call her cousin. Yes, I'm here on the Empress's orders. She commanded me to bring you back, Erasmus said firmly. Pandora's gaze shifted to her reflection in a nearby window. She was still in her vampire form, something she hadn't intended. She could feel the spell's lingering influence over her, tugging at her identity. Did I truly transform into a vampire? Or is this spell forcing me to stay in this form? No, that can't be right. I'd be able to sense it if magic were affecting me, wouldn't I? She questioned, a creeping doubt filling her mind. Something was off. Her thoughts felt hazy, her concentration slipping. There was magic in her system. I won't go with you. Stop trying to track me, Pandora shouted, anger flaring at her family's interference. Whether their intentions were for her benefit or not, the idea of someone tampering with her mind to prevent her from shifting back into human form was too much. The spell shattered under her willpower, and her mind cleared. I'm sorry. I truly am worried about you. The spell was only meant to prevent you from doing something that would make you impossible to find. I just want to keep you safe, Erasmus said, his tone softening. I'll forgive you this time, but don't ever do something like this again. And I'm not coming back. I'm going to change this world, and for that, I need to stay here. I'll create a world where no child ever has to cry again. That's the end of it, Pandora said, her resolve sharpening. With that, she began shifting back into her human form. A gentle violet shimmer danced across her skin as her appearance changed. Her glowing eyes dimmed, becoming softer. Her hair turned black, and her sharp fangs rounded and shrank. The blood connection between them faded, severed by the transformation. Her blood was no longer the same. It had changed completely. By altering her blood when she shifted forms, Pandora had bypassed the vampire's bloodline magic, which relied on tracking familiar blood. Just as she was about to head back to the Helios Academy, something caught her eye. A curious, radiant glimmer. How is this possible? That's an Arcanus. But why can I see it from this distance? Pandora wondered, her instincts suddenly on high alert. The Arcanus burned brightly, like a flame fighting against the wind. Something was wrong with it, something deeply unnatural. Intrigued, Pandora followed the spark. The source was a young woman with blue eyes and black hair, standing on the edge of a skyscraper rooftop. Pandora's steps quickened as realization struck. The girl was about to jump. At first, Martina only heard the faintest sound, footsteps, barely noticeable. Then suddenly, they became louder. Panic rose in her chest as she turned, scanning the rooftop for anyone approaching. Have they found me? Are they here to stop me? She thought, dread creeping into her voice. But no one was there. The air around her grew heavy, charged with a presence far stronger and stranger than anything she had ever felt. The footsteps seemed to echo from the void between the skyscrapers, and a dark mist caught her attention. A shadowy figure emerged from the fog, its form indistinct and blurred. Glowing violet eyes pierced through the darkness, and a distorted voice echoed from the figure. Well, what's a lonely little child like you doing up here? It asked, its voice a warped mixture of curiosity and malice. The figure's mouth glowed faintly, but no teeth or tongue could be seen within. The smile looked flat, like part of a mask, eerily unnatural. The sudden appearance of this figure is so unexpected that Martina momentarily forgets what she should say, or even do. She stares at the floating silhouette suspended in the air. Once her initial shock fades, a daring thought crosses her mind. With nothing left to lose, she decides to act on it. Can you help me? Or at least free my friends? Martina asks, Your friends? What do you mean by that? The figure responds, It's a long story and they're not doing well right now. It'd be easier to explain while we're moving, if you're willing to help, Martina says, visibly stressed. The figure remains silent, gliding closer toward Martina. What's with this child? And why does it look like she's been crying so much? Pandora wonders, concealed within her mist-like form. I could help, but not until I understand everything. I'll decide whether I'll help you once you tell me the full story, Pandora finally says. As Pandora studies the girl, her gaze lingers on Martina's simple white dress and the futuristic collar around her neck. A strange sensation washes over Pandora as she recognizes the collar. Memories flash through her mind. It's the same type of collar used in humanity's high-security prisons, designed to detect and suppress the wearer's use of Arcanus. In most cases, the collar either explodes or delivers a fatal consequence if tampered with or if powers are used. Miss, Sir, this collar, as you can clearly see, is meant to stop me from using my Arcanus. These collars are also used by the Nova Corporation to control people like me. I was separated from my family, along with 150 other children, under false pretenses and forced to work. I barely escaped, but I'm afraid they'll find me again. Please, help me, Martina pleads. Hearing this, Pandora is taken aback by the sheer cruelty of humans. She had always known humans could be unkind, but this was almost more monstrous than anything vampires had ever done to humans. After all, vampires had never stooped to forcing humans into labor. Slavery was an invention of humanity alone. Pandora hesitates, knowing her friend Camilla would worry if she stayed away for too long. Still, Pandora thinks she can send Camilla a signal about where she is and the situation with these children. I'm not a hero, but I'll help you, for a price, Pandora says, her distorted, dramatic voice carrying a heavy weight. I have nothing to give but my body, and I can't even use my powers, Martina says, her voice trembling. I don't want your body, Pandora replies sharply. What's your name anyway? Martina. What is it you want then? Martina asks cautiously. I want to test something. It'll be quick, but it might hurt a bit, Pandora says, raising her hand. A sudden flash of light shoots from Pandora's palm, striking the collar. The lights around them flicker and dim. Before Martina can react, Pandora steps closer, rips the collar off, and throws it aside. Well, that went smoothly. Now for the test I mentioned, Pandora remarks. What the? How can this person be so fast, and also fly, and control lightning? That's 3 Arcanis! Martina thinks, her confusion growing. Pandora places a hand on Martina's arm and frowns. Something seems to be going differently than Pandora anticipated. Her glowing eyes narrow as she stares into Martina's. I'll help you, but you'll help me in return. I need you to use your Arcanis. Wonders, isn't it? It grants wishes, correct? Pandora says in her misty form. Wait, what? How do you? Martina stammers, confused. Repeat after me, or I won't help you, Pandora demands. Such it is, and at that moment, the building's rooftop door bursts open, and 3 men in futuristic armor, wielding energy weapons, storm through, where a metal door once stood. Hands up, or we'll shoot. No one move, the lead man orders. No, Pandora replies simply. What happens next is a blur. Pandora does 3 things simultaneously. She crouches into a combat stance, opens an invisible portal behind one of the men, and begins gathering fire in her hand. Without giving the men time to react, Pandora launches herself forward in a low leap, twisting midair to deliver a powerful kick to the lead man's chest. The force sends him flying backward, his weapon firing a stray shot that sears into the concrete rooftop, leaving behind a glowing scorch mark. The man vanishes through the portal, reappearing 50 meters away in midair. His scream as he plummets to the ground distracts the remaining 2 men. Exactly what Pandora needed. Channeling all the energy of the C-rank fire, Arcanis she stole from Lilith Hustle, Pandora delivers an uppercut to the man on the left. The heat flares so intensely that the flames burn pure white. He doesn't even have time to scream before his upper body disintegrates into ash. A sharp hum pulls Pandora's attention, and she sees the remaining man aiming his weapon directly at her head. The white light of the weapon charges, brightening as it prepares to fire. Pandora sidesteps just in time, closing the distance between them. She grabs the weapon's barrel, which begins to glow red-hot under her grip. The man yelps and drops the steaming weapon. I was just following orders, he stammers, trembling. A loud crash from the street below signals that the man Pandora sent flying has likely met the ground. Pandora decides not to kill this last man. Strip. I need to be sure you're not carrying any devices to call for backup. And as Pandora commands coldly, I wish that no emergency calls or attempts to communicate with devices within a 20-meter radius work, Martina says, her voice steady. A soft light radiates from Martina as her wish activates. Though nothing appears to change, Martina feels confident no signals can get through. Pandora whistles softly, impressed by the utility of Martina's Arcanis. What's your name? Martina asks. Cascart. Pandora lies, adopting a new persona. I'm part of the Black Paradise organization. You have potential, but my terms still stand. I'll help you, but only if you repeat the wish I give you. Your Arcanis wonders can make almost anything happen, correct? It just requires more energy for bigger changes. Yes, but how do you know that? Martina asks, bewildered. Doesn't matter. If you want my help, repeat after me, Cascart insists. I wish that I could only remember the promises Cascart made to me in exchange for forgetting his powers. I wish for my memories of all of Cascart's abilities to blur, and for me never to want to undo this in the future, Martina repeated. Well done. Now we just need a plan. Where are your friends? Pandora asked. You mean to tell me you didn't have a plan yet? Why did I even? Martina began, visibly irritated. I had a rough plan, Pandora interrupted calmly. It involved killing anyone who stands in my way, handing the children over to the heroes after exposing whatever the Nova Corporation is doing here. Plan B was to inform my contacts and let the heroes overrun this place. Alternatively, we could just burn it to the ground. Well, that last part was a joke, Pandora said with a faint smirk. Martina was surprised at how blunt her savior was. However, upon reflection, she realized she didn't feel as guilty about the idea of the Nova Corporation's henchmen being killed as she thought she would. That didn't make it any better that her rescuer was such a person, but it was still better than nothing. Martina watched as the shadowy figure raised her hand, and a shimmering rift opened in the air. It looked as if reality itself was breaking apart at that point. The fragments of the shattering reality fell into the rift, giving the impression of glass cracking and spreading two-dimensionally across an invisible pane. "What is that?" Martina asked, startled. "It's a place where we'll be safe. There, you can tell me where your friends are. It's also where we need to go if we want to reach them quickly," Pandora replied in her persona as Cathcart. Despite her unease, Martina followed Cathcart into the rift. As she stepped through, she noticed something bizarre. Cathcart's form stretched like a thin thread into infinity, resembling the spaghettification effect one might expect when falling into a black hole. The strangeness of it all left Martina with a single thought. This isn't normal. On the other side of the rift, Martina found herself in an eerie, dark world. Beneath her feet was an obsidian black ocean, shallow yet seemingly endless, stretching beyond the horizon. A faint, melodic chiming echoed as the rift behind her closed. She turned just in time to see the rift sealing itself in reverse, as though time for it was running backward. The spectacle was mesmerizing enough for Martina to momentarily forget why she was even in this situation. "Hey, Camilla, I need your help," Pandora's voice suddenly rang out. Using her arcanus, Pandora suppressed the sound so it wouldn't travel through the portal into her pocket dimension. Camilla, lounging on her bed, looked up to see Pandora's face emerging from the wall. While the sight was unsettling, she was immediately ready to assist, even without knowing the details. "My plan is simple," Pandora explained. "You can play the loyal, high-ranking woman of the Black Paradise organization, right? I intend to rescue some children, but it's also possible I might just need your advice. The person with me needs to believe we're part of a powerful organization. That's why I'll alter your appearance slightly." "Of course, I'll do anything for you," Camilla responded without hesitation. "Great. Come to the third constellation," Pandora said in her Cathcart persona. "Now walk toward the wall. The portal is invisible. And remember, I'm Cathcart," Pandora whispered slyly into Camilla's ear. Camilla, ever perceptive, quickly locked her room. She understood the Academy's layout better than anyone. Surveillance systems monitored everything that entered or exited the school, but there were no cameras in private quarters or bathrooms. "Protocol. Exit," Camilla said aloud, summoning a drone that perched itself on her bed. "Variant 2? Route 52, she added, issuing additional commands to her machines. Without hesitation, Camilla walked directly toward the wall, not even flinching at the prospect of colliding with it. For Pandora, she would do much more than simply walk into walls. "I'll act as the vice president of the organization, and you're something like a general or commander," Pandora instructed as Camilla stepped into the pocket dimension. Even if Pandora hadn't cloaked Camilla in an illusion, Camilla's expression or body language wouldn't have betrayed her surprise. Despite never having entered this space before, she kept her composure. "Cathcart, you called for me. How can I assist?" Camilla said, fully embracing her new persona. "I've made it so my words to you cannot be heard by others. From her perspective, you look different, and so do I. But maintaining these illusions gives me a headache, so I'll have to adjust them slightly," Pandora murmured so that only Camilla could hear. "I summoned you to discuss the injustice inflicted on this young talent and her friends by the Nova Corporation. Her arcanus is called Wunder, and she could be very useful to us," Cathcart stated firmly. "How do I handle the intimidation?" Pandora pondered. Pandora and the Eternal War. Video 16, page 12. Martina revealed everything she knew about the Nova Corporation's crimes to Cathcart, and the figure in the black cloak and armor, referred to by Cathcart as Third Constellation. The information she shared was shocking, leaving the room in silence for a brief moment. Above them, the black-violet sun sparkled brightly against the obsidian starry sky of the pocket dimension. The stars shimmered like diamonds, casting an eternal and timeless aura over the scene. Pandora, deep in thought, weighed her next steps carefully. She knew it was imperative to rescue the children immediately. The thought of their suffering gnawed at her, unbearable and urgent. Yet, in the recesses of her mind, another thread pulled at her attention. The recent revelations about her lineage. She was an aristocratic vampire, and her mother was likely dead. If Serafina von Bloodfallen were alive, the tracking spell wouldn't have found her absent so clearly. As they discussed their strategy, the third constellation suggested blocking Nova's escape routes as the first step. Without precise knowledge of the underground complex at the harbor, they would need to act swiftly and in unison to give Nova no time to flee. That's a good idea. You're an excellent advisor, Cathcart said to the third constellation. The planning continued for a few more minutes, solidifying a strategy that felt reliable enough. The plan prioritized rescuing the children above all else. Evidence of Nova's criminal activities would later be presented to the heroes, who could then take further action. We can begin the rescue mission shortly, but first, I need a word with the constellation, Cathcart said. With a snap of her fingers, Pandora summoned a wall of black liquid that rose between them, slicing through the air as though dividing the very world itself. The wall exuded an eerie stillness, glistening like molten onyx. Pandora turned to Camilla, who had played her role flawlessly. Camilla glanced at the wall and then back at Pandora. Yes, she can't hear us now, Pandora assured her. Why did you do this so suddenly? It was unexpected, Camilla asked, her tone cautious. I thought we might need someone like her in our group. Well, that and... Let's just say it's been a long day. Maybe I didn't think this through entirely, but I can't steal her power, and she might prove useful, Pandora replied with a faint smile. Are you telling me you can actually steal superpowers? That's impressive, Camilla said, feigning surprise. Wait, you didn't know? I thought you'd already figured that out, Pandora replied, raising an eyebrow. I did. That was a joke, Camilla said, smirking slightly. Oh, I see. Anyway, what do you think of this space? And the name of our little organization? Black Paradise. Sounds cool, right? Pandora asked, a hint of pride in her voice. It does have a certain flair, Camilla admitted. But in the future, please consult with me before making such decisions. This kind of risk shouldn't be taken lightly. Oh, don't worry about it. I can steal the powers of anyone who gets in our way. It'll be fine. And if not, I've always got you, Pandora said nonchalantly, brushing off Camilla's concern. With the plan in place, Pandora and Martina set out for the harbor in the metropolis of Alpha. Pandora was confident everything would go smoothly, but she couldn't have been more wrong. Ending thus concludes Pandora and the Eternal War, Part 16. What happens next? An electrifying surprise and an unprecedented battle await Pandora in the dark underground chambers of Nova Corporation. Nova harbors a secret that no one, heroes or villains alike, could have anticipated. The truth behind their experiments will leave everyone stunned. And that wraps up today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, feel free to share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. If you want to catch more of this story, click on the playlist on the right side of the screen, where you'll find all 16 parts of Pandora, the Eternal War so far. At the top center of your screen, you'll see my channel link. Go ahead and check it out for more content. On the left side, you'll find the link to my latest video, so be sure to give that a watch too. I hope you've been enjoying Pandora, the Eternal War, and I can't wait to see you in the next part. Get ready for thrilling conflicts and the unveiling of the mysterious crimes committed by the Nova Corporation. See you soon!